All right. So first on our agenda is the node affinity question. So Darshan asked yesterday, we have multiple auto-scaling groups configured with an EKS cluster. We are using Argo to create workflows and ended up in a bad situation where Argo pods were scheduled on GPU nodes. As we are on spot, the pods were rescheduled on other nodes during the spot interruption events. We want to avoid this to add affinity pods created by Argo. Can it be done via something or some config, or do we need to rely on an external policy engine like Kyverno? So we had Tim jump in and say yes, and that there's no reason why you couldn't do it with a pod spec patch. So Alan, if you could jump in a little bit and talk about node affinity versus like node selector and the general problem or pod spec patch and the general issue of making sure that your jobs get scheduled on the right nodes.
I'm just going to shout out to Shankun. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name right, who's also on our joined us today for office hours, who also answered on node affinity.
Very nice.
Nice to meet you, kind of in person at least. So node affinity allows you to select which, it's a general Kubernetes concept that allows you to push your pods onto specific nodes within your cluster. You can use this to schedule them on spot nodes as here, so that, or not on spot nodes, depending upon what you want to do. If you need your pods not to be, if you know that your workflow pod is not going to be retriable, you don't want it to get evicted from a spot node is a use for it. You could schedule some jobs onto, let's say you're doing an ARM and a x86 build, you could schedule some onto ARM, some onto x86 and do a mixed build in a CI kind of scenario. Perhaps you're doing data processing and you want some jobs to get done on nodes with GPUs. You could do that. And there's various ways of doing it, as pointed out in the thread. That's, as you've got lots of people on, let's keep it brief on the details of this.
Sounds good. Let's give Shuang-Kun just a second to jump in if he would like to, given that he did us and Darshan a solid by answering the question. Feel free to either jump in by voice or by chat, or if you don't feel like jumping in, Shuang-Kun, thank you so much for your contribution in the chat. We really appreciate it.
And for all your contributions to the software.
Yeah, just generally. All right. I assume he doesn't want to jump in. In that case, let's get into the upcoming archived workflows UI fix. So I believe that was a little bit further up, and that is here. So I think a lot of us are running into this issue that Jonas called out. Hi team, we are currently facing huge UI performance issues on Argo workflows 3.5.4. Seems like some calls never end, and he gave the root, or she gave the root. I don't know if it's linked to this ticket, which is closed, but it's not limited to Chrome. Test with multiple browsers. We've seen this on multiple browsers too. The query is basically never finishing. So this is a pretty well-known and documented bug. So essentially, Tim called out that we're going to have to wait for a release. There's a patch slated for 3.5.5. Currently, at least with our customers internally at Pipekit, we've been recommending that if they're using archived workflows, they roll back to the latest 3.4x version. But there is some discussion of what is coming next in the fix. Alan, I will kick it to you.
So in 3.5, the user interface, in 3.4, the user interface had a separate section for standard workflows that were still in your cluster and archive workflows that have been archived out to a database system. In 3.5, these were merged. Unfortunately, this has resulted in a number of fairly severe performance issues, which are not yet fixed. And even 3.5.5 won't fix all of the issues. 3.5.5 does have a bug fix in that should help with some of this. There's been some debate as to whether to completely undo this change, because it's actually quite hard to get right. Basically, the user interface doesn't now know exactly what it's talking to, whether it's talking to a database at the back end through the Argo server, or whether it's talking to the cluster. And there are some queries that are quite a lot more expensive to do in one direction or the other. And yeah, it's causing a number of problems. I don't know that regressions is quite the right word there, but yeah, 3.5.5 should improve things, and we'll see how that goes. But there's still more work to be done after 3.5.5 if you're running with a very large number of archive workflows.
Glad a fix is coming in. During the contributors meeting, I voted to roll back. Alan voted to fix. Seems that we're going with Alan's proposed path forward of doing a fix. I'm got my fingers crossed though. I really hope for everyone's sake that we can get this one eliminated. All right. If no questions, comments related to the archived workflows fix, we will dive into container sets. So let's see here. I believe it was this one. So I'm using an Argo workflow for processing an order. When a user submits an order, then I'm submitting an Argo workflow. In my YAML, I have 5 steps, and step 2, steps 3, and step 4 are dependent on step 1. Step 5 is dependent on step 2, 3, and 4. Now, my order processing logic is not very complicated. It should take 30 seconds, but pod initialization of all steps are taking 4 minutes. How can we increase performance here? Anyone, or can anyone help me here? So Tim from our team called out that 2, 3, and 4 could be done in one pod or a container set. If you're feeling brave, this is a solution that we've recommended to several of our clients who are faced with similar problems where the pod spin-up times are too long, especially for short-lived jobs or things that quickly depend on calls from one pod to another. He gave a shout out to his call in the upcoming ArgoCon. So I think this would be a good time to go over like container sets and what they are. So container sets are, instead of a normal Argo workflows step where each step is happening in a given pod, you're grouping several of those steps into one pod and being in different containers in that pod. So you're going to have a pod startup time that's going to be a lot faster, and it's just going to spin up several different containers that are going to potentially be doing different things. Alan, I will turn it to you if you have things you would like to add or comment on.
In general, container sets are a slightly an anti-pattern, I suppose, but Webflows does support them. I think really Akash should investigate why his pods are taking so long to spin up. 4 minutes is a long time. There are a number of workarounds for that, container image caching, or it's very hard to tell from the information here. Container sets are one pod, multiple containers, which is a standard Kubernetes concept again. With a container set, you can't have any dependencies between those pods within. They all run in parallel, and it tends to use more CPU in terms of you would be reserving the CPU. It's a worse thing for scheduling for the cluster. I mean, you have to reserve all the clusters, all of the CPU on one node, all the memory on one node if you're doing proper container resource requests and limits. And it will be reserved for pods 2, 3, and 4 for the lifetime of whichever of those lives longest, rather than if 2 and 4 are quick and 3 takes longer, then 2 and 4 will be reserving their space even though they've finished their work, which is worse. So, but it does have some advantages, as you suggested, for inter pod communication. It's very quick at this in that design. So there are scenarios where I can see it being useful. Yeah, done.
All right. Thank you, Alan, for providing some cons to counterbalance some of the pros. I think those cons are definitely good to keep in mind. And yeah, the only times we have recommended container sets have been for mostly short running jobs where the life of the job is going to be shorter than the pod spin up time, and you have several that are that short. All right, cool. Looks like we got a question in the chat from
To be clear, you
shows.
don't have to respond to them now. I'm queuing things.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I mean, this was the time in which we were going to transition to just answering questions. So thanks, Josh, for your question. We can go ahead and dive into that now. And for other people that have questions, if you could just post a rough order in the chat. So either post your question, or if the question is too long, just type next, and we'll see that you are the next up in the order, and we will just work through those linearly. So I'll go ahead and share my screen to what Josh shared. We will take a look. In the meantime, Josh, could you give us a bit of context? So this work,
Yeah,
or yeah,
context.
after you.
I do a little bit of everything. I am an Argo contributor. I end up owning a lot of user interfaces because I care about user interfaces. I also care about spelling and particulars and consistency and documentation and a little bit of everything. We do host some Argo workflows, and I prefer to file bugs based on public instances. So this would have been the public instance I would have filed bugs about or asked questions about. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you. For clarity, is this the Argo Workflows just like project website that I'm
So
taking a look at right now?
effectively, yeah, if you change workflows to CD, this is their this is Safari or something.
I'm on Arc. It's another browser. So is it just cd.apps?
Yep. So this is the instance that CNCF or whatever runs that's managed somewhere in GitHub.
Okay.
And it does things, and sometimes they work. It is handy because I try to file most of my bugs based on this, so I can have screenshots and I don't have to worry about censoring any content. But so I found the Argo Workflows instance from here, clicked the link, and it took me to the page you saw, which meant that I couldn't ask questions. I mean, I can, but I'm using an old version, and I'd rather be able to know that they're currently broken than current.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a good call out. I haven't seen the workflows.apps .argoproj site before. I wasn't aware that the CNCF was running like a publicly accessible Argo instance for debugging.
I mean,
It
I suppose
seemed
publicly accessible at the moment is questionable.
for sure.
I know that there was a DNS migration, or if there was an attempted DNS migration. I suspect that the Argo workflows there that CD is supposed to be managing and is degraded might be the workflows.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you click on that, that's the little pop-out arrow is how I got there. But the thing is that the degraded didn't seem particularly exciting.
You've got oh no, Argo server is degraded.
Oh, I missed that. All I saw was the CI. There were too many pods, and I looked at the wrong ones. Okay, yeah, that's probably the problem. Anyways, it'd be nice if somebody fixed it. Could I trouble you to actually log out of a work or open an incognito of a Argo workflows instance that you have?
All right. Hey, Alan, could you pull that one up? I'm not connected to our VPN right now.
You know how much screen sharing is, though.
Yes. Give me 1 minute. I will try and connect to our VPN. Alan has a fun distribution of Linux and pretty consistently struggles with screen sharing, but I will try and pull one up.
You want me to?
You can take another question while we wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I am not seeing additional questions in the chat. Does anyone else have an additional question while I'm pulling up an Argo Workflows instance?
Maxim, we're testing scaling and parallelism in Argo workflows, trying to push a lot, understand throughput that cluster can handle. If you run one workflows with 5 tasks, it's completed in 50 seconds. 100 workflows with 5 tasks, try to run in parallel. The average time of completed workflows is the same for all workflows, 3 to 5 minutes. You would expect the first workflows will leave first with completed state. So 3 point, so your Maxim, you are attempting to ensure that a started workflow hogs your cluster until it is complete before another workflow is started. Is that your aim, effectively?
Yeah. So like,
So-
yeah, basically, yeah, my expectations are like first come, first out, but at the end, like it's waiting resources because other workflows taking them, like trying to initialize pods. And like all this is 5 steps, not completed at once. It's just like waiting when some resources is available.
So there's a couple of options that if you're wanting this globally, you could run in the Argo Workflows config map. There is a parallelism or a namespace parallelism configuration, which would then limit the number of concurrent workflows either globally or per namespace, so that they don't overlap so much, and then you would that would help you. Does that make sense? Help you?
Yeah, we are doing it. So for example, we have like 50 parallelism, but it's still like, yeah, first workflow, like finishing. So if you, for example, have like one workflow running, it's just running in 50 seconds, but if you have like 50 of them, it's running much longer.
And that is down to pod scheduling time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So maybe Alexander, you know, we have like some colleagues that try to understand what is going on here. So basically,
sorry,
yeah, there is
Sorry,
like not resources, and it's trying to find these resources in order that like, yeah, there is nothing like wrong probably with the pods, but with that like it's waiting for there is some resources is available.
So, but is 50 too big for your cluster? I don't know. It's very hard to tell from the information I have at the moment.
Okay, I will try to explain like maybe in with more details in Slack. Is it okay?
Okay. Yeah, that would, if you can get some information like that, and perhaps it's hard to know what the limiting factor is here, and if you're really trying to get through workflows, isn't necessarily trying to, you're subverting its normal behavior in order to try and get FIFO throughput. I would say you need low namespace parallelism and to run them in namespaces in order to achieve some sort of throughput, but it is hard to tell whether it's that or your Kubernetes API or something else that's the limiting factor. Are you running on a cloud provider?
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay. Should we go back
All
to
right.
Josh? And sorry, you go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. So yeah, Josh, we've got that Argo Workflows instance pulled up for you.
Thanks. Can you log out
Let's see
of this
here.
thing? Yeah. Okay, so for a few moments, you're at the top right under the cute little octopus, it shows unknown, which I mean is kind of cute. But hold on, let me log out of mine.
You were saying the version was showing as unknown?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I I mean it's long enough for me to be able to see it even on a screen share. And sort of the first thing that I see is this, well, why does it bother doing that? But also obviously this entire screen is, well, ugly is being very polite. So in terms of things, I mean, first of all, there are, I believe, 3 login, maybe there's the word login is here 4 times. 2 of them are buttons. There's also another log out button, which is confusing. Actually, I guess login is here 5 times. There's one at the top left as well.
Yeah, 1,
Um,
2, 3, 4. Yeah,
and there's
lots
one
of
at the top right
logins.
as well. So the screen is, it feels like it was a debugging screen. And I have sympathies because I spend a lot of time debugging, but as a product, the screen needs to be redesigned. As a normal person who approaches the screen, they are like, what in the world do I do? And so this is sort of the first place that we would want to do something. So when I actually do log in, the next thing that I go to generally is the 3 little, the pancakes on the left, for lack of a better word. You'll of course have to log in first, I'm sorry.
Yep, I will pull that up
And
again.
on average, just to describe it for everyone else, the page doesn't load, and we basically have to reload it to get it to load. I think that's because we are starving our instance of Argo workflows, the server. But the next thing, of course, is the thing on the left is well, ugly. The thing, no, not that, the boxes, workflow summary, namespace labels.
Mm.
The number 5 that's sort of floating under succeeded in a very funny way. The zeros to the right of pending and failed that are floating in a different way. The blue 0. Everything about this doesn't look like anybody has spent any time thinking about the UI. The next thing that I'll beat up is on the right. You see there's columns for name, namespace, and started. And then you have some ellipses in places which are just not really useful. I would argue that the counting seconds are useless. It's fun watching somebody else's screen refresh, but if you're going to do truncation, you're better off just saying it's 6 minutes. And if I actually need it, I'll look at that one record and see just the one. Like this is something I'm actually beating up our team about for our product. Basically, if you show too much and you then need to ellipsize things, you're doing it wrong. Better to show less and have fewer artifacts. Similarly, like the ellipsis, well, no, okay, so that's enough about ellipsis.
To jump in real quick, so we definitely agree that there are a lot of design things within the UI that leave a lot to be desired. I think historically on the project, the UI has been a bit of an afterthought, or maybe not even a bit of an afterthought, but much of an afterthought. So unfortunately, it just hasn't ever had, like, I think, a dedicated designer or a dedicated, really like UI specialist who's going to go in and maintain that section. If that's something you're interested in contributing or working with us on, contributing, we'd be happy to, do like a very deep dive
I'm
on
happy to
on
provide
the UI.
the guidance. I do not have the time to do the work. So like I'm happy to do, as I just did on this call, point out things and basically as things progress, move on to the next screen. But especially as we are moving away from Argo workflows, it makes less and less sense for me to actually spend time actually fixing bugs in it.
Okay.
But
We'll follow up offline with kind of your like list of critiques and see if we can slate some of them to get fixed on a certain timeline.
well, thank you.
All right. Cool. Got a couple more items in the chat. Want to make sure that we're getting to everyone. Looks like Dennis asked about the release for 355. That Alan responded that it's being worked on, and that people are actively trying to get it done. Looks like Dennis had another question about template level timeout parameters. I'll pull up these links. Alan, if you could read the question and respond while I'm doing that.
So there's a template level timeout parameter that handles pods to be pending too long, but it also flows into the active deadline seconds of the pod, leaving no way to control just the pending timeout instead of the full end-to-end execution timeout. I'm debating creating a pending timeout field with overlapping functionality versus finding out why existing timeout works the way it does and possibly fixing it. Could someone share some context and or opinions on the matter? Oh, okay. So yes, the timeouts are, so the active deadline seconds counts from once the workflow goes into running until it reaches status completed in any way, and it doesn't include the pending timeout. Am I right there, Dennis? I believe it
I think
doesn't.
the active deadline seconds might actually just, I'm mostly looking at the pod execution level here. And
Okay.
Active deadline seconds, I think originally, at least in Kubernetes level, it's just for execution time of the pod itself. It doesn't include pending.
Yeah, I think that's the case for workflows as well. So you are looking at wanting a pending timeout.
So the template templates and Argo workflows actually has a timeout parameter that is evaluated at pending time. So you can use it to catch pods that are pending forever.
Yeah.
But after the pod gets started, there's logic currently in Argo workflows that transfers this pending timeout into the active deadline seconds for the pod. So if you set your pending timeout to no longer than 5 minutes, for example, after the pod starts up in 5 seconds, the pod can run no longer than 5 minutes.
Right.
So I'm wondering, why are we doing that? It seems like we're kind of making active deadline seconds redundant.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to think about it a bit better than you. You've had some time to think about this. So if what's your proposal then? You'd like a pending timeout seconds that is one option. Active deadline seconds only applies once it's active. Is that your proposal?
Right. Either we could, change the functionality of the existing one, rename it, or if there's some reason why it works the way it does, we basically leave it alone and create a parallel one that maybe has some shared functionality. Do we know if anybody's using a template level timeout?
People definitely are using it. I've definitely seen people using it. But I don't know enough about the backstory on it, and I haven't had a chance to investigate as to why it behaves exactly like it does. Yeah.
All right. In that case, we can dive in a little bit more, and comment on the issue. Thank you for pointing this one out, Dennis. It seems like it is well received within the community, and so we'll spend a little time jamming on it and follow up asynchronously.
Yeah.
All right. Last question in the chat is from Alexander. This will be the last one that we answer, given that we're a little over time. So recently we've implemented Carpenter for our Argo workflows cluster. We've noticed that the average workflow duration metric shows the slowness of the workflows being run on the nodes provisioned by Carpenter. It's not drastically slow. On average, workflow finishes in around 1 minute, and on nodes provisioned by Carpenter, the time is 1 minute 20 seconds, 1 minute 30 seconds. Do you have in mind the general direction of debugging such an issue?
I would start off by looking at how long the pods are spending in pending. If you're pulling in large images, it could be that the difference is how long it's taking. If you're using Carpenter, you're obviously on Amazon. Don't know where you're pulling your images from or what size they are, but it could be that the nodes are taking time to warm up their image caches effectively because they're fresh. If this is, although if these nodes are then old but still provisioned by Carpenter, do you still see that issue?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
So if you run the same workflow on these Carpenter provisioned nodes after they've been alive for a long time, do you still see that they are slower?
Yes, that's correct. We still have this issue. That's why it's strange, and yeah, we are searching for some ideas to debug.
So are your Carpenter provisioned nodes the same node type, as in are they the same machine type? And
They are much bigger. They are much CPU. How can I say it?
Larger number of CPU cores and
yeah.
larger amounts of memory. So usually that would, well, is the pod using a lot of ephemeral storage? Is the storage just the same speed?
Yes, the storage is the same speed, and the storage is again larger. So I checked that also.
And I suppose the thing I would probably start looking at is the how long is it taking for the node to start? Then how long is the node taking to execute the job, the work, and then how long is it taking to shut down? Work out which of those phases is the longer one, and that might lead you in a direction. That's
All right.
my initial thought.
Okay, thank you.
It's a tricky one. Yeah, that's a very odd thing. We don't use Carpenter. We've had bad experiences with Carpenter, and we use the standard Kubernetes autoscaler instead, which works fine, but it should provide the same style of nodes. The other option is some sort of CNI differences, as networking differences. But again, usually these things settle down from my experience, and after they've been around for a while, they stop being different. I don't have a great idea, I'm afraid.
Still, thank you very much.
All right. I think that is all the time we have today. Thanks everyone for showing up and asking questions. It seems like we have a couple people to follow up with asynchronously. We will do so. We'll also put out the recording on YouTube, and we'll post it in, I think, the hallway channel, and tag each of you if you want to come back and review anything that we went over today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next week, same time.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you.